Right, well, it's now approaching middle of May, and look at this. It's green. Not as quite green as we'd like it to be, but green nonetheless. So, between the time that you last saw us back in about March, April time, and May, tensions and emotions have been high here on Erinvale and in the broader sheep industry as well. I do not like talking about politics. I do not like talking about stupid people deciding that they're going to make decisions that affect everyone else except for them. But rest assured that what they're doing, they're not going to get away with this, and it's going to blow up in their face. And to give you some context, let me explain. Meanwhile, as in concerns to the sheep, the weaners have been crutched and a handful of them have been shorn. The reason why they've been shorn is because we were planning to send them off on legitimate to a feedlot to try and get them to be more fattened up so we can get a better price for them at the sale yards. As of yet, they are back in the new river paddock where they have joined the rest of the weaners for the time being, going in and out between Boggy Ute and the new river paddock, which we finished the fence for, to try and munch on some of the green feed down there, because for the rest of the farm, it's pretty bare. As for the rainfall, well, so far we've only had 20 mils. All the context has been provided on our farm in particular. Let's drop the tailgate and let's discuss what the hell's going on in the broader industry, because it's sending a lot of people through emotional highs, and it's not the best plan to go about things. Hey everyone, my name is Noah and you're watching TJM Farming here on YouTube. If you're new around here, this channel's all about farming. We mostly focus our time in these videos on our 3,000 acre pasture property here along the Moore River in Western Australia, focusing on our merino sheep. We also have in previous done a series on my family's old 14,000 acre property up in Canna, Western Australia, which is known as the Nellie Creek Real Life series. That was made back in 2021 when we had Cyclone Seroja come through and flatten it all. We sold that farm, bought Erinvale, and now we're here. Now, keeping in mind this channel is mostly aimed to farming, Australian farming in particular, and by Australian farming in particular, that particular part of that is merino sheep farming. We do not usually like to talk about politics on this channel, but I do feel like this is the perfect opportunity to talk about this, because it's not going to affect just the growers themselves in this instance. It's going to affect everyone in Australia, and let me explain. So in 2022, we had a change of government from the coalition, the Liberal National Party under Scott Morrison and Barnaby Joyce as his deputy, to Albo and his co-pilot, public enemy number one, Adam Bant. Other things, Albo is known for his dodgy policies. When he came into power, he originally promised a cut to power bills by $275. That has not happened. He's promised a voice to Parliament, which people did not ask for, and the country said no. But they kicked up a stink about it and tried to pass it in certain states anyway. And among other things, he made life hell for the people in the regions, the people in the urban areas, and a lot, like 80% of Australians hate the bloke. And keeping in mind that the Labor Party did not get into power by the majority vote. They only got 32% of the vote, and the rest of the vote went to the Greens and the Teals. I'm not going to cover the Greens and Teals very much because I'm not going to cover the Greens and Teals because the Greens and Teals are irrelevant to this situation. Anthony Albanese is the Prime Minister, and for our Federal Agriculture Minister, we've got Murray Watt. Oh, Murray Watt, what have you done? Now, it's also key to keep in mind that in Australia we have a two-party preferred system. On one side is the Liberals and the Nationals, and the other side is Labor and all the other left-leaning parties that are incredibly radical, do not run businesses for themselves, and are the inner city people that are stinking wealthy and like to spit on everyone else. And one of their policies was to phase out live sheep exports. Now, live sheep export, for those who do not know, involves the shipping of sheep as well as a bit of cattle from Fremantle to our partners over in the Middle East. That includes Israel, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, if I'm saying that right. I'm probably going to get roasted in the comment section for that. But it basically involves the offloading of sheep from Australian sheep farms here, put onto the boat, and they go off on holiday on a one-way ticket, happy as Larry, camping on a ship from Fremantle over to the Middle East. The boat ride is not the problem, but people have got to remember, once they leave Australia, they're not exactly the responsibility of the Australian farmer. Now, why is there a big hullabaloo, and why am I talking about the export industry? Well, for the sheep farmer, you've got three basic outputs for where we can take our sheep. Number one is the domestic market, which is what sheep studs, that their primary purpose of selling rams to farmers is for. They sell their sheep to the domestic market, as in other farmers and people that are coming into the farming industry. Option number two is to take them to the Mushay sale yards, in which case they'd either be bought by other farmers, other corporations, or abattoirs that go and process them into onshore meat. Option number three is the boat. And the reason why the boat has been so popular is because any economist will tell you that any market always has an ebb and flow, supply and demand. If the demand is not there and the supply is too high up, the price goes down. If the demand is there but the supply is not, a bunch of people are going to try and jump into that market to fill that supply because money, money, money. That's not the only thing though. The trouble with the domestic market, especially when selling to the abattoirs, is the abattoirs like to rip the farmers off. And as a result, the consumers in the supermarket shelves, they see the price difference. Like lamb, for example, in your Coles, Woolworths, Aldi, IGA, etc. down in Perth, you'd be looking at between $7 per kilo to $15 per kilo. Now, you've got to remember that when we sell our sheep, they range between 180 to sometimes up to 300 kilos. They're pretty heavy. But the price that they get, that we get as growers in the sale yards, is the shortest end of the stick. And the price that you pay in the supermarket does not go to the farmers at all. It actually goes to everyone else on the supply chain. And by that supply chain, I mean it starts with the growers. The growers sell it on to the stock agents, who pay the auctioneers to sell the sheep, and then the abattoirs pay the truckies, and then you've got the processors, and then of course you've got the big head honchos of the supermarkets that take a huge cut of the funds. And then at the end of the cycle, when you go from a sheep that weighs roughly 200 kilos to a bunch of lamb chops that you find in the supermarket, the price in the supermarket is actually way more than what farmers are actually getting in the yards. The meat side of things. For other parts of the spectrum, merinos are also known for our wool production. That means that a lot of times farmers will pay for shearing gangs, which includes shearers, Roustabouts, shearing gang heads, to bring their gang out here to come and take the wool off us, thus saving farmers time. In the long run, because especially on big operations where they can range from 1,100 breeding ewes to 8,000 sheep in total, we need to get them through the shearing shed and back out the paddock as fast as we can, because you gotta keep it on the flow, especially when you have a lot of sheep to get. The shearing gangs, plus the wool buyers, and the truckies that cart the wool on their trucks to the wool buyers. What I'm trying to say is, the supply chain in the sheep industry as a whole is a great big web, and everyone in regional WA gets something out of it. Even the cattle producers, the same goes for them. Explaining all this? Okay. It's always been Labor's policy when they came into power in 2022 to phase out live sheep exports because they see it as cruel. Now, it's important to remember that not only does live sheep export provide another outsource for farmers to send their sheep off to, another way to generate more income than we otherwise would get from the abattoirs or selling them domestically. But on top of that, live sheep export contributes $143 million per year on average to Australia's total GDP. And that is incredibly good for the WA economy. On Saturday, right off the back of coming from Rockhampton in his home state of Queensland, Senator Murray Watt, who, need I remind you, is from Queensland, barely comes to WA at all, barely ever speaks to the farmers, and barely ever gives a rat's ass about the growers and everyone in the regions. He comes over from Queensland, sneaks into WA without anyone noticing because everyone's preparing for Mother's Day on that Sunday, and he goes and makes this bombshell announcement. We are going to phase out live sheep exports by May 1st, 2028. 2028, okay. What's the date today? We're in May 2024. They want to phase it out within 4 years. And then you've got some people that are unemployed, rich people that have too much time on their hands, so they jump on the Facebook saying they want to phase it out now. They do not understand how this is going to affect the people. It's not just going to affect the farmers. It will affect everyone in Australia as a whole. What does this plan mean? Well, it means more onshore meat production. Sound familiar? You see, our cousins, our friends, our buddies over in New Zealand, they're already trying a similar thing. They're already trying to phase out their live export in favour for having as many onshore meat production as they can. Small problem there. The chilled meat market and the box meat market is already overflowing. Too much supply, not enough demand. There is no money in it. So for Senator Watt to come and sneak into WA and basically tell us that we're going to get rid of a pretty big chunk of farmers' income, especially when certain farms, such as us on Erinvale here, we can only run on sheep. Sure, we've got a dirty big four-wheel drive tractor there and an air seeder in the background, but the land cannot grow any crop. So how do you expect us to adapt to this within 4 seasons? It cannot be done. People think, oh yeah, it's just going to affect the growers. Oh, the 400 jobs lost. Oh, that'll go to the abattoirs, right? Let's run the numbers here, shall we? In Western Australia, there are 4,000 sheep producing families. In those families, on average, you'd have a mum, a dad, maybe a son and 2 daughters, but sometimes those families can range up to 7 kids. If we times that by 4,000, that's not 4,000 people, that's That can range between 10 to 12,000, my friends. And it will affect everyone from the Shearers, the Roustabouts, the Stockies, the Truckies, everyone to those very, very small primary schools that rely on the farm kids and the kids of the farm workers to come and build up the population in those schools. If those farms shut down and the farmers have to sell the land and move on to other things, those schools will be affected. Those local IGAs and those local shops will close down because there's nobody there to buy the produce, meaning that towns will go empty. And where will those people go? The cities. Bearing in mind that cities such as Perth are already overflowing with immigrants. There is not enough housing there to support everyone. Australia is known for its wool production. We're most famous for our shearing, outside of the landmarks, the mining, and the automated iron ore trains up in the Pilbara. Before all that, before we had our pretty cities in Sydney and with their harbour bridge, and Melbourne with their what does Melbourne have? Trams. I don't know. Before we had all that, what was Australia's first key industry? It was not mining. And it was not the railway, because the railway did not come to WA until the 1880s. Before that, our first industry was wool production. What's the biggest wool sheep? The merino. They've got a giant statue of it down in Wagen, the big merino. If they take away that live sheep export industry, it's not going to become profitable for the farmers to keep going with sheep. And that's a huge problem. That is a major problem, because not only will it affect those 4,000 farming families, but it will also affect all of the truckies, all of the wool buyers, all of the classes, the shearers, the mechanics that keep our sheep farm machinery running. Everyone. It's going to affect everyone. And it will not make the price of meat in the supermarket shelves go down. Far from it. I'm all for locally produced. But riddle me this, Agriculture Minister Watt. How do you expect to have us build all these extra abattoirs in 4 years and find all those Australian workers to work in those conditions in 4 years? It cannot be done. Because the time it takes to build an abattoir is up to 10 years. 10 years. Minimum of 6. And you're telling me that you want the abattoirs to basically expand their production. They're going to rip the farmers off. They're going to rip us off cheap as chips. And that's saying something, because when we sent our older white and orange tag ewes off last year, we sent them on the truck, they only gave us roughly $28 to $32 per head for them on farm. That's all. And keeping in mind, that same mob of ewes, back in 2019, they would have fetched easy a minimum of $180 per head. It does not add up. Combined with there's a shortage of feed. And in some places, a shortage of water. You're telling me that you want to phase out an industry just because of the drought. And a lot of farmers, we're smack bang in the middle of seeding. And a lot of farmers are still feeding out hay bales to their sheep because it hasn't rained. Only 20 mils of rain here on the Moore River alone. Sure, Gin got more. They got something like 43 mils or something. But some places as far east as Southern Cross, they've only got 8 mils. And some places, up in the Murchison, for example, they've only got 0.8. 0.8. So if you take that outlet away, Not only will it put 4,000 sheep growing families out of work, but it will also put out upwards of 2, 3, maybe 3.5 million people that are across regional Australia out of work. And make no mistake, they're not just targeting sheep, they're targeting cattle as well. The Animal Justice Party have already decided they're going to start talks with Labor and the Greens, and they're trying to weevil their way into the Libs and Nats as well. They're trying to target the cattle trade next. That's what their promise is going to be next election. They'll be targeting the live cattle trade. And everyone can still remember, back in the Julia Gillard days, the chaos that had on the cattle trade. It will not make the price of meat cheaper. Oh no. What this will do instead is it's going to put tens of thousands of people out of work. And it's going to make blocks like this useless. But make no mistake, if the animal welfare people, they do not care about the people that actually work out here. They just sit behind their computer screens all day, watching these documentaries. Here's my message to the animal welfare people. We care about our sheep. We care about our cattle. Livestock farmers would not be livestock farming if we did not care about the well-being of our animals. It is our top priority. If you truly care about animal welfare, get up, put some gumboots on, get your backsides down here and help. Do a couple of weeks on a sheep farm or a cattle farm. Do some actual work. Help to make the lives of these sheep and these cattle easier with all these mummy and daddy rich money. Okay? Do some actual work. Because I'm sorry, if this goes ahead, not only will it make sheep worthless, but we could see the final solution of 1990. We've already started seeing that. By the final solution, what does that mean? People who have studied the Holocaust would know that it was Hitler's way of putting down Jews through concentration camps. And it's a similar practice for the sheep and the cattle if this gets banned. If you ban the live sheep and the live cattle exports, it will condemn millions of sheep and cattle to being put down, and their bodies aren't even utilised. They're just shoved into a hole and buried. This happened back in 1989, 1990, when the wool price crashed. When the wool supply was too much and the demand wasn't there. The government decided that the final solution would be to pay farmers a certain amount of dollars per head to destroy their flocks. And that was the death knell for many smaller sheep farms in the industry at that time. And that was a heartbreaking thing to do. Because you've got to remember that, well, not only did it put so many sheep out of luck, it also put a lot of producers that have worked so hard. Some have been working their whole lives on the land, trying to put food on the table for their families and their stock. To put their stock down, to put down the thing they loved. It drove people over the edge. And that's exactly the same thing that happened back in 2010, 2011 when the live cattle trade was cut off. There's no other way to say it, but if If we as producers and consumers that love Australia want to support our farmers and our regions, unless we take a stand now, we could be facing the same fate. And God knows that we do not want to have that again. My message to my fellow sheep growers: we feel what you feel. We've got the right to be frustrated. We have the right to be upset, and we have the right to be mad. But there is still hope. You never know where, and you never know how, but resistance will always spring forth. Rest assured that here in Erinvale we're going to keep fighting, just as well as the National Farmers Federation and my 3,999 fellow sheep growing families will do the same. We'll have a lot of farmers leave the industry if this goes through. We've already seen a lot of sheep growers leave the industry now, this year. But my message to you out there: Australia's got the highest animal welfare standards in the world. We are the benchmark. Let's keep that benchmark going. Let's send a message to the Labor government using any device you got. I don't care if it's a phone, an iPad, a Samsung, or a GoPro like I'm holding right now. But my message to everyone: make a video. Make a video telling the world what sheep farming means to you. And like WA Merino on Facebook has said, let's send a positive message telling Labor to back off our sheep. If we can save the sheep industry, we can save animal agriculture as a whole. And we can send a message worldwide that we will not bow down to these careless, merciless activists that only care about themselves and not the people that actually work hard to do this, to care for their stock. Make a video telling the world what sheep farming and what live exports means to you. And spread this hashtag far and wide. Hashtag keep the sheep. Let's go viral, folks. Our regions are on the line. It's up to you now, Australia. Make us proud. So this is what live export means to me. Live exports means that we can put food on the table and food on the pasture for our sheep that remain. It means, sure, the sheep will die, but we all die someday. That's just life. But look, what live export means is that we can take a bare pasture like this and we can afford to buy in feed, to put a hay bale out there to feed our stock. It means that we can have a future for our little baby lambs which are dropping right now. It means we can care for their mamas. It means we can care for our rams. It means that we can turn this farm around and turn it from a pasture block that's been unmaintained for 20 years into a thriving turnkey farm. That's what live export means to me. So all the best of luck, Australia. The regions are counting on you. Let's send a message. Hashtag keep the sheep. Thanks for watching.